as I promised you. Today, we're going to get into the diary of an American who gave up the American dream to live in the Philippines. And this gentleman has allowed me to have an exclusive into his story, which I'm starting 7/29, because 7/29, something happened that we're going to follow this all the way through. It may last 8 months. It may end sooner than that, but it may be a situation in this man's life for 8 months. Again, here's a man who in the USA, okay, he was well accomplished, professional, businessman. He gave all of that up for what he perceived as a happiness that he found in the Philippines in his years of traveling back and forth from the U.S. to the Philippines. He discovered a happiness that he did not find in any other country. So he decided that he was going to pack up and move to the Philippines. He retired from his job. He sold all of his assets. That which he didn't sell, he gave away. And he sent his personal belongings by way of cargo. And he moved into the house that over the years he had been building little by little, just a shotgun house. I'll show it to you as we go on. It's a comfortable little house. It's not bad. It's okay. And he didn't spend an exorbitant amount of money, but one thing you can tell is that his house is, how should I put it? It's lovable, it's comfortable, it's livable. It's nothing glamorous, but it's comfortable. And it's accommodating. So again, he's packed up, he moves to the Philippines. Well, prior to him leaving the Philippines, during the pandemic, he had caught COVID and he had long haulers COVID. So he was still suffering with some issues related to COVID when he embarked on his trip. Remember, a lot of people say when you get to the Philippines, you should be in tip-top shape. This is no place for anybody that's not in shape, etc., etc. Well, this place can heal you. So anyhow, as I was saying, suffering from long haulers, he embarks on his journey to relocate to the Philippines, to live his best life. When he gets to the Philippines, he catches COVID. He believes that he caught COVID in the airport in the USA. He recalls a lady with a very, very deep mucus cough. And it was a loud cough, and she didn't cover her mouth, and he couldn't move from around her. So he pretty much believed that that's where he caught the COVID from. Can't be for sure, but he says that's the only surroundings he was in other than on the airplane, where when they were disembarking from the airplane, they fumigated the plane. Now, me, myself, and I never saw an airplane fumigated with the passengers aboard. But he says that the plane was fumigated with the passengers on board. So now he arrives to the Philippines. Soon as he gets here, he goes to this hotel and he falls asleep. He wakes up. He was in a bad state. He was sick. He said he knew only one thing to do because he had a lot of luggage. He still had a long ways to go to get to his house. He knew he had to get out of that hotel and he had to get to his house. He didn't know what was wrong with him. He says he didn't even consider that he may have had COVID. So he summons the porters at the hotel. He summons a van to carry all of his luggage, packages, etc. He gets to the bus terminal. He catches a bus to his residence, which was about a 4-hour ride. By the time he gets to General Santos City, where he resides, he was exhausted, he said. He says he was afraid that he was so weak till someone may just walk up to him and just take stuff out of his hands or just take his luggage and walk off with it. And he couldn't even holler for help. He says he felt he was that weak. But somehow or another, God intervened. When I say God intervened, God sent a man who was on the bus with him, who was a Secret Service agent for the Philippines. Yeah, he was a Secret Service agent for the Philippines. And he says that this agent just approached him and asked him, was it anything he could do to help him? And where was he going? So he said, he explained to the man, etc., etc. And the man summoned all of these people to get his luggage, to get a van, put his stuff in it, tell the van driver where to take him. And he, the Secret Service agent, followed him all the way to his house, followed him until the neighbors and other people came and unloaded his van, not his van, but the van who took him to his house, unloaded the van and brung all his belongings in the house. And he saw to it that my friend was safely inside his house. He gave him his phone number, everything, says, if you need me, call me. He says the next day when he woke up, bad shape. Bad shape. He's in his house. He's got all of this stuff with him. He decides to shower, which was well needed because he was so weak he couldn't make it to the bathroom, apparently, during the night. So he had to shower, clean up, do some laundry, and clean up his house a little bit. So he says he was enthused enough to do that simply because he knew he wasn't well, but he couldn't have a nasty environment. So he says he did all of these things. He says the next thing he did was he got his medicine out and he pulled out a COVID test. He took the test and wouldn't you know it, he was positive. So he was fit to be tied. Here he was, General Santos City, in a house by himself, no help, no nothing. And what did he do? First, he thanked Allah, he says. He said, I thank Allah for bringing me 3,000 miles and allowing me to get here to my place safely. He says, and then he started calling people. He says, he was afraid. He says he needed help. He didn't know what to do. So people came, they gave him help. Some people stayed with him. They took care of him. He recovered. Little by little, he recovered. And needless to say that During his time of recovery, he was weak. He lost a lot of weight. But still, he says he was grateful. He was grateful to hear the azan 5 times a day. He said that meant the world to him, that he was in a place where he could actually hear the azan and look out his door and see people like you see colonies of ants. You could see people going to the mosque every salat. And he said that gave him the energy and the courage that he needed to pull him through that COVID. So here in the Philippines, unlike the US and other countries, certain drugs which are prescribed and you can only get with a prescription, here in the Philippines, you can get them just by going to a pharmacy and asking for them. So he says he sent people to the pharmacy to get him prednisone, some other things that he thought was appropriate for his COVID. And he began to take those along with some of the herbal remedies that they had here. And he began to his process of recovery. So he spent the next couple of months recovering. He would be able to go to the mosque occasionally. He was able to get his house cleaned. He was able to cook and clean his yard and do some other things. He was getting his strength back, you know. And again, he says the main thing, he was so grateful just to be in the Philippines, just to be around and amongst people who believed the same as he believed. And that inspired him so much. So he, sick, so forth, he saw other people in need and he helped them. At that time, I want to say, at that time, he was able to financially help them. And he did. He helped people that he saw that had certain situations or who came to him because they knew he was in the country and they asked him for help and he was able to help them. He did that. Remember, we always say when you help someone else, you actually are helping yourself. So that being said, his recovery continued and everything was going fine. He was considering trying to get an investment from his family to get a vehicle or a motorcycle, to open up a chicken rotisserie place. And, you know, things were looking like they were all right. And all of a sudden one day when he was expecting a deposit in his account, it didn't happen. He didn't get deposit. 3 weeks went by. He still didn't get the deposit. At this time, after 3 weeks, the 4th week, he began to get ill. He began to have pains and symptoms that he reflected back to was signs of something or someone was in trouble and that there was something he needed to look into in order to stop this illness and to stop these pains that he was having. So he began to wonder what could be wrong. He called all his kids. He called everyone that he knew. And every situation was in hand. It was taken care of. One night he says he sat up in the middle of the bed and something told him, go check your SSI. Check the status of your SSI. Well, his SSI, when he checked it, had been placed on hold. So his first insurance was 4 weeks past due. Now, coming for the month of August, because I'm starting this with him 729. That's when he says he woke up and discovered online that his SSI would be on hold until he repaid $9,000, which the U.S. government claims that he was overpaid. Now, how this happened, why this happened, how they took and put all his money on hold, left him with no income, that's all, United States government. That's how they do business. That's how they do business for people of color, for minorities, for Muslims. That's how they do business for people who are not, I would like to say, people who think like the Republican regime. If you're familiar with the Democrats and the Republicans in the United States, you know that the Republican Party is basically a racist group of people with money and power that wants things to go back to the way they were during slavery. Basically, that's their goal, to turn the government back to a slave state. So now here he is, 729. He knows that he's already 4 weeks with no income. Now he knows that for at least 8 months, he's not going to have an income unless he can pay this $9,000, because they're going to hold his monthly remittance until he pays this $9,000. So what did he decide to do? He told me that the first thing he did was he recognized that his condition and that his situation was purely a test from Allah, a test from the Creator, a test from the universe.